We think samples is an easy button for engineers. It's not. Wow.
Like, I couldn't wait for my snare to come in because I'm like, oh, I gotta hear this mix. Bro, he put in this deep ballad snare.
When I say the producer was so hands off with the drummer, but I was hired to be the recording engineer at that moment. Something like this, I'll show you as an engineer something I would definitely replace, not layer. I would replace this, and that is his. I'm gonna pull up my screen here. We're gonna actually, because like I told you guys earlier, this is show and tell. So I don't want to just show. We don't just want to talk about this. Let's actually look at some examples. So I pulled a couple of examples. I think Aaron sent me an example. So let's go here. You guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, good. We live then. All right. So this is Logic. I don't have Pro Tools on this particular machine, on my streaming machine, so I just pulled Logic up. It's the same because we're just listening to literal raw audio, raw drums. All right. So here's some drums that I got. I got two examples that I'm gonna play for you guys of a great example and something that I think is like normative. And I'm gonna show you guys something that's actually really dope. So here's something. This is the average of what we get as engineers. Can y'all hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, bet. That's playing in. There we go. Okay, that's the rim shot. Let's go to a place where it really gets active. So this is normative. Like, now this sounds decent. It's not terrible. You know, I've gotten a whole lot worse, but this is a great example because this is normal. But I want to point out a couple of things about this recording. So I'm going to actually solo some stuff. So let's solo the kick. This is a great reason why, as an engineer, I would actually use a sample. Let's listen to this kick. That's the kick. You can actually hear the entire kit faintly bleed into the kick mic. Now that means
that 10-inch tom sounds sweet. I can hear that 10-inch great.
Oh yeah, you can hear it. No, it sounds. I'm not even talking about its tones at this point. I'm dealing with bleed. This is bleed.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like the 10-inch tom is coming through just as clear as the kick drum.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. So when you consider that, like, what am I gonna do with that? So the kick is going where, boys and girls? The kick, in case you don't know, is going straight up the middle in a mix. We don't pan kicks. Kicks go straight up the middle. So if I add compression to this, if I turn it up, guess what's coming up the middle, boys and girls? All of that bleed is, especially when I add compression. Compression makes louder things softer, and softer things what? Louder, boys and girls. So when I add compression to it, it's going to bring all of that stuff up. And then you get the drummer or whoever says, why does the toms sound like they're mono? Because they're going up the middle and we compressed it and we're using that kit. This is like a normative, more normative, not totally normative, but more normative of an actual recording that we get in cases like this. Now, here's a solution. Again, I don't talk about problems without talking about solutions. There's sessions, what you can do, and I know Jan and even Aaron can comment on this as well if y'all want to. I want y'all to actually. One of the things I've done as a recording engineer, I've taken like a blanket and threw it over, you know, the floor tom to help isolate that kick mic in there and help the bleed, keep the bleed from going in there, because everybody's room, everybody's situation is different. You know what I mean? Everybody's isolation is different. Everybody's setup is different. So that's one thing I've used to mitigate bleed on it, or minimize bleed, because you're not going to be able to get it completely out. It's almost thoroughly impossible without gating and doing some extra tricks. But those are some things that you can do to help with mitigating bleed. You know what I mean? Comments you guys got on that?
Put an expander on that bad boy. I mean,
yep, an expander.
A lot of cats sleep on that. Gating is literally just the door slams shut, the door slams open. But when you put an expander on there, the door closes a lot slower.
Yep, and you mitigate that.
It's like you're
you don't even have to close it all the way with the expander.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like,
how do y'all feel about manually gating, like the toms?
Yeah, we do that. I do that all the time. I did this with this record.
Yeah, we clean them for sure. Like that's, you know. So I think that, but when you do that though, when you start to cut the original source file and that tail ends, it is going to start to sound more digital. It's going to start to sound more. So some people actually mistaken replace drums, and it's like, no, it's not. That's actually your kit. But after all the processing that we had to do on your drums to combat with 60 cents, it sounds replaced.
Yeah, it gets cut off.
You know, like. Because I've asked John, like full transparency, I've asked John, like, did you replace those? He'd be like, nah, okay, cool. I mean, you just must have, you know, that's the result of the cleaning. You know what I mean? So it's funny.
I'm gonna go to bat. Listen, as the type of engineer I am, I'm going to bat for your drums. Like I want for them to sound good. I don't want, because using sample. This is again the misconception. We think samples is an easy button for engineers. It's not. Like, because again, we don't, a lot of times, most of the time, we don't have the original samples from your kit. So we're trying to make it work in the context of a mix with samples, you know, that work. So yeah, we have to deal with this. If I can clean that, if I could put a gator or an expander on that after the fact, it would be great if you could have some outboard gear that can clean that up, or you can gate it going in, you know, if you know how to use outboard gear. That's what, you know, they're going to do, recording with that in mind. That's an art form to it, though, because if you do it wrong, you're going to mess up your recording going in, and you've committed, because when you're pre-processing, you're committing to everything going in. So I'll show you as an engineer something I would definitely replace, not layer. I would replace this, and that is his rim shot, because this is how his rim shot sounds. It just doesn't sound good. So I know I have a rim shot that is going to sound better than that. That's going to cut through the mix a whole lot better. So I'm probably going to select that, trigger just this section, cut it, drop it on another track, and then trigger just that rim shot. You know what I mean? And just mute the source. That's something that I would do in the mix, because I know that I got rim shots that sound way better than that. And I don't have to spend time trying to make that work.
That's a good point that you're starting to get to. You know, sometimes when it does come to the mix, you do have something that you just say, oh, I know this is going to work.
I know this is going to work
so much better. Like, you just know. It's no different than a producer, you know, if you get a rough track from somebody and they have a synth bass on it, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I got a Moog right here that I know is going to cook much better than that little synth bass they use. So it's like, okay, yeah, sometimes it does become maybe a by default thing, but again, it's the full spectrum of understanding the mix and where it needs to be, knowing, oh, this is going to get me there. Because sometimes it's about speed.
And sometimes it's about what you like as an engineer in terms of your sound, because I know drummers say this. I see this as a, you know, when they clocked in the lids that morning and got ready to start stocking the shelves with all the caps. They'll say, you know, when a producer calls me or somebody calls me, they call me for my sound. And I think Aaron said that. That's not a shot at you, Aaron. Definitely, I'm not shooting at you at that particular point, because what you said, I'm gonna clean that up in a second. You know, but producers and artists also call engineers for their sound as well. So we're both getting the exact same call, both for our sounds. Now, I think there's a dissolution to be made between whether the question is, did they call you for your sound or did they call you for your performance? Because those are two different things. I work with producers that called a specific drummer, maybe a Calvin Rogers, maybe a Spank or whoever, and they called them specifically for their sound. And so when it comes down to the mix, they will tell me to preserve that sound because that is what is important to them. But the vast majority of producers, that is the normative part of it, they call the drummer, they call all of the musicians most of the time for their performance. And so there's a difference. If like someone like Aaron that's called for his sound, if the question is about his sound, You know what I mean? And that is translated all the way to the mix engineer. And then something else comes out on the other end. Then we have an issue to really talk about because the engineer did something he wasn't supposed to do or did something unwarranted.
Ooh,
you know what I mean?
That's a good point, because I've been in a situation where, and I was telling one of my friends this the other day. I think this is my gripe with sound replacing.
Okay.
There was a session that I did for somebody. It was an artist and the producer, and he approved of my drum sounds. He approved of everything, right? So everything gets submitted, everything gets mixed. The final product comes back, it's released, and my snare is it's completely different.
Wow.
Like, I couldn't wait for my snare to come in because I'm like, oh, I gotta hear this mix. Bro, he put in this deep ballad snare. So I called the artist and I'm like, bro, did you tell them to change my snare? He goes, oh, I didn't even notice that your snare was changed.
Wow.
He was like, he said, I didn't tell them to change anything. So then I called the engineer because I knew the engineer, the mixing engineer. I said, hey, bro, what'd you change my snare for?
Yeah.
He was like, oh, man, I'm sorry, man. I just needed a ballad snare on that one.
Yeah. That's a different conversation because that's totally different. Because if an engineer is doing that, and that's really more on the producer than it is on the engineer as well, because the producer, that means he was just as negligent. And I've dealt with people like that. I deal with producers like that are just totally hands off. I've been in sessions. I was in a session, like, I think I talked about this yesterday. I was in a session and the drummer, the producer was in the session. He brought the drummer into the session. We were recording it right here, right out there. We were recording it. And when I say the producer was so hands off with the drummer, like the drummer was not, I was hired to be the recording engineer at that moment, but I ended up having to sit in the producer seat before it was over because the producer was so hands off with the record. And I'm like, we record, I'm listening to it. I'm like, that doesn't work for the record. That's not, we should be doing 4 on the floor right there. What is he doing? And so I look at the producer and I say, you cool with that? Yeah, I think we could take it again. I'm just like, bro, produce the record. Like, what are we doing? So I just, at a point, it just got on my nerves and I just jumped in on the talk back. Hey, bro, we need to get 4 on the floor right here. Like, producers need to be just as hands-on with the mix and as the, engineers are. Like, it's a collaborative thing. So if that happened to you, and I'm sad that happened to you, that should not have happened to you. You know what I mean? That means that the engineer was dealing with a producer that was just like, I just need to get this mix. Here you go. I trust whatever you give me. You know what I mean? And that should not be the case. I like working with producers that know what they want. They give me what they want, and they're communicative throughout the process. With that said, I'm going to show you this second situation that I got that there's a little bit different. I actually got these drums from Cedric Thompson for a record that I mixed for him back last year. Really dope record. And I'm gonna let you guys hear these drums that were recorded, I believe, in like an actual studio with outboard gear and all of that stuff like that. Then I'm gonna point out a couple of things about this after I play this example. Now, instantly you can hear a difference in the sonics. And these are the raw files, so to speak. Now let's go back to this other one. Let's listen to this other one. These are raw files on both. About the same amount of tracks too.
I mean, you can look at the waveform and see the difference, bro. Like,
yeah, you can.
You can see the difference in the waveform.
Listen to that.
How it's recorded. Exactly.
Listen to that. Now I'm gonna point something out as well with that the producer did. This is what the producer did. This is what Ced did when he sent this to me. Number one, he gave me a kick trigger. There's a kick trigger in here. So I have not one kick trigger, I have 2 kick triggers. That's the actual kick. Sorry. This is kick trigger too. So I got 2 layered kick trigger. This came from the producer after he recorded. He added in 2 samples on top of that. And listen to the difference in the bleed on the kick drum on this one. You can hear it, but it's nowhere near as egregious as this other one was. The toms are almost non-existent in there.
Yeah, I mean that's either really great mic placement or again, like Jan was saying, the expander.
Yeah.
And they sent he sent the processing with it
He sent
already
the processing
done.
with it. Overheads are clean. There's just depth there. So it's definitely higher quality mics.
And
Better
where it's
placement.
going in, yeah.
You know what I mean? Versus overheads on here, these overheads. All I'm got is cymbals. I don't got no snare in the overhead. Like, I don't know how that happened.
Look at the waveform, man.
Yeah, look at the waveform. Let's make it bigger. Look at that. Literally, all I got is cymbals. How I don't even know how sonically that even happened. I don't know. I don't know.
I think they
They're probably
rolled,
on the outside.
They probably that or they rolled off the low end already.
Yeah, but them overheads versus these overheads. Those are overheads, and it adds more depth to the mix. And then he did the same thing with the snare. So here's the original snare. Let me find it. Hold on, I'm trying to see.
Yeah, he already edited the overheads. I can tell by the waveform they already edited.
Yep. So this is his snare top. Way beefier. But he also gave me a couple of triggers. Well, he gave me a trigger. So he gave me a trigger. And listen how it complements the original snare. It's almost the same. So when you put that in context, there's not much I have to do to that as an engineer because the producer has already done a lot of the work for me. And the toms are also cleaned as well. Check the tom track. So if I take these, look at how clean these tom tracks is. Like, these are things that either the producer definitely helpful when the producer does it, but most of the time we have to do this as engineers. We have to go through and clean and gate our. We have to go through and gate our own toms or clean our own toms. So he went and did that for me. So it results in a much cleaner drum track with more depth. Because I don't care what you do, you can't getting those toms as clean as possible, like out the jump, is very difficult because you're working with so many mics. And so these are the things that we don't talk about in the process. This is people get out here on lids, they log into lids, get on this app, and they start capping and start doing all of that, and you don't understand anything about the process. You don't know anything about this process. You don't know that that's what the engineers have to do. You make assumptions, and you know what I was almost at the Bible. The Bible does not say anything about assumptions, about that whole A out of you and me. The Bible actually does not say that. But I almost
it don't
said
say it that way, but it's in there. It don't say those words.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere.
But it's in there. It's definitely
but you
in
know
there.
what we say, what people say about when you assume, when you make assumptions, what happens. And so you definitely don't want to assume anything in those moments and in those things and with these situations. Like, there's a lot of things that go into recording drums, and there's also a lot that goes into editing drums, and there's a ton that goes into mixing drums. So I wanted to do this. I wanted to bring us all together on this because, you know,
You got
there's
Air Sample pulled up?
these files, they did not come with instructions. sent me these files. He gave me concept. He gave me his triggers. He gave me what he wanted. It made it easier. But this didn't come with no instructions. Even the performance of the drummer. Listen to how he's hitting those toms. Listen to how the toms sound. Let's talk about the performance of it. Where's this? There's a moment where he just really lets loose. I think it's right in here. You could tell that's probably a part of the song where there was probably something major going on based on his feel. But I don't have no impact. I don't feel those toms. Like I said yesterday, there's no right way to do things, but that doesn't mean there isn't a way to do things. There's several correct ways to do it. There's several wrong ways to do it, but there are ways to do it. Whether it's this or that, the end result, the proof is going to be in the pudding, in the sound. Listen, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Hangout podcast, which we do these weekly here on the channel. Make sure you check out the long form version right over here. Hit the like and subscribe button. We'll talk to you guys on the next one. I'm out. Holla at your boy.